If I were to ask you who the wealthiest people in the world are today, tech titans like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates would probably come to mind. But the truth is, the richest businessmen to have ever lived passed away nearly a century ago. Today, we're going to dive into the story of a massive empire whose founder's wealth remains unmatched, even after 100 years of technological progress. This is the story of Standard Oil, the history of the greatest oil monopoly the world has ever seen. Actually has pretty humble beginnings. Our story starts in 1839 with the birth of John D. Rockefeller in rural New York. His father was a traveling merchant who called himself a botanic physician, but in reality, he was just selling the 19th century equivalent of fake medicine. On top of that, he would disappear for weeks at a time. The wildest part? He actually brought home children he had with another woman, expecting his wife and his mistress to all live under one roof. As you can imagine, growing up in such a bizarre and chaotic household taught John a lot. He learned how to read people, how to hustle, and how to squeeze the absolute most out of every single penny. Because his family was constantly on the move, John lived a nomadic lifestyle. To help support his mother, he raised turkeys and took on odd jobs for neighbors. When they finally moved to Cleveland in 1854, his sharp business instinct began to show, and he finally got the chance to attend a proper school. But less than a year later, he dropped out to take a job as a bookkeeper at a local produce broker. He was making just 50 cents a day, a joke of a salary even back then, so he started taking on extra work at night. After 2 years, when his bosses refused to give him a meaningful raise, John decided to give them a real lesson. He left and started his own produce brokerage. Despite his young age, he had built such a solid reputation for honesty and reliability that he managed to secure a $4,000 loan, a massive sum at the time, trading hay, grain, and meat. He racked up $500,000 in sales in his very first year. Just think about it. He was only 18, and every bank in Cleveland was practically begging to lend him money. The real turning point came in 1859. Just 100 miles east of Cleveland, America's first oil well was discovered, sparking the famous Pennsylvania oil rush. Now, oil wasn't nearly as valuable back then as it is today. Gasoline cars didn't exist yet. It was mostly processed into kerosene for lamps. But this is exactly where John's genius shone through. He realized that the real money wasn't in drilling for oil, but in processing and refining it. He saw so many people lose everything and go bankrupt hunting for oil, and he knew that kind of risk wasn't for him. His mindset was, let everyone else take the risk of finding it. We'll just buy it from them and refine it. He had to wait until 1863 for the government to lay down the rail line connecting Pennsylvania to Cleveland. But the moment the tracks were down, John was ready, backed by strong financial partners and banks. He immediately put together a team of seasoned chemists and engineers. While his competitors' refineries were running at just 60% efficiency, John not only boosted that number, but he also figured out how to sell what others threw away, turning waste products into tar, naphtha, and paraffin wax. In just 2 years, the Rockefeller refinery was worth over $70,000, making it the largest in the city. But he always had his eyes on a much bigger prize. In 1865, there were 26 competing refineries in the area. Within 5 years, John had bought out all but 4 of them. The business grew so massive that by 1870, he officially incorporated the legendary Standard Oil of Ohio. His strategy for buying out competitors was both ruthless and brilliant. He would invite them into his office, lay his accounting books on the table, and quietly send a message. I can operate at a loss far longer than you can stay afloat. To those who agreed to sell for a fair price, he offered leadership roles in his own company, effectively absorbing the brightest minds in the industry. For those who resisted, he would slash prices by up to 80% to starve them out. This brutal strategy worked flawlessly. By 1880, Standard Oil controlled over 90% of all oil production in the United States. He became so powerful that he could sit down with the heads of major railroad companies and dictate massive exclusive shipping discounts. Naturally, these backroom deals infuriated the business world. Back then, railroads were the lifeblood of transport, and other industrialists panicked, worrying that if Rockefeller's tactics caught on, their own industries would be monopolized next. Over the next decade, business leaders, politicians, and the media absolutely hammered Standard Oil, while lawmakers in Ohio were drafting antitrust regulations to bring him down. Rockefeller was already one step ahead. In 1882, he moved operations to New Jersey and formed the massive Standard Oil Trust, consolidating more than 40 local companies under one giant umbrella. As a grand display of this power, he built a magnificent headquarters on Broadway. This was the absolute peak of Rockefeller's reign. 20,000 oil wells, 4,000 miles of pipeline, and over 100,000 employees. But it's lonely at the top, and the winds were shifting. Massive oil reserves were discovered in Russia and Asia, and the legendary Rothschild family was doing everything they could to flood the American market. Worse yet, in 1890, the federal government passed the landmark Sherman Antitrust Act to break up monopolies. Because Standard Oil's legal structure was incredibly complex, it took the government until 1911 to finally dismantle it. By then, John Rockefeller had already stepped away from daily operations to enjoy his retirement. And just in the final 20 years of the company's existence, it had paid out over $500 million in dividends. At its peak, the company's true value was estimated at a staggering $1 trillion. In 1911, the Supreme Court found Standard Oil guilty of anti-competitive practices and ordered it to be broken up into 34 separate companies. But here is the ultimate twist. Ironically, this breakup turned out to be the most profitable event of Rockefeller's entire life. He never sold his shares in those newly formed companies. Over time, many of those spin-offs merged back together and grew into the corporate titans we know today. Companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Bosch. His ownership in these successor companies pushed John D. Rockefeller's estimated net worth to a mind-blowing $400 billion, making him the wealthiest businessman in human history. Even today, he sits comfortably at the top of that leaderboard, and it looks like not even Jeff Bezos is going to beat that record anytime soon. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video, and take care.